There's a certain kind of person who watches the world the way someone else might watch a burning building, carefully, silently, ready to run if the flames get too close. They don't open up easily. They don't rely on anyone. And even when someone gets close, they keep a part of themselves locked away where no one can reach. You've met someone like this. Maybe you are someone like this. A person who listens more than they speak. A person who observes every shift in tone, every tiny change in expression. Someone who seems calm, collected, self-contained. But inside, there's a history written in invisible ink. People who can't trust anyone rarely say it out loud. They don't declare it. They show it in subtleties. The silent pauses before answering personal questions. The instinctive flinch when someone gets emotionally too close. The way they always check the exits, not physical ones, but emotional ones. How to escape, how to detach, how to not get hurt. Most people think distrust is about anger or paranoia, but they're wrong. It's about memory. Because people who can't trust others were almost always the kind of people who trusted too much once. They gave loyalty without hesitation. They believed promises without second thoughts. And when everything fell apart, it didn't just break their heart. It rewired their entire emotional system. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, a state where the brain stays on high alert long after the danger is gone. But that word doesn't capture the lived experience. It doesn't explain the exhaustion of scanning every interaction, the emotional tension that never fully goes away, the feeling that closeness is a risk and distance is safety. People who can't trust anyone didn't become this way because they're cold. They became this way because they were warm. Too warm. In a world that didn't handle their warmth gently. Somewhere along the line, they learned a painful truth. If I don't rely on anyone, no one can disappoint me. So they built walls, not the kind you can see, the kind made of silence, independence, and emotional self-sufficiency. They learned to carry their own burdens, soothe their own wounds, solve their own problems. To the outside world, they appear strong, resilient, even unshakable. But that strength is forged in loneliness. Because the psychology of people who can't trust anyone is rooted not in superiority, but in survival. They've been lied to by people who promised honesty. They've been abandoned by people who swore they'd stay. They've been used, taken advantage of, misunderstood, betrayed. And after enough of that, something inside them changed. They stopped expecting consistency. They stopped believing words. They stopped letting their heart make decisions. And the saddest part, they didn't stop trusting because they wanted to. They stopped because they felt they had no other choice. Inside their mind is always the quiet question. What are you really after? How long until you change? What will it cost me to believe you? People who can't trust don't need reassurance. They need evidence. Not promises, but patterns. Not words, but consistency. Not affection, but emotional safety. Yet even when someone offers all that, trust still comes slowly. Like a door opening in tiny increments, never all at once. This isn't stubbornness. This is trauma disguised as caution. Because trust, for them, isn't a simple emotional choice. It's a psychological risk, one they've paid for before. Nobody wakes up one day and decides, I will never trust anyone again. It's not a switch that flips. It's a slow accumulation, a series of moments, big and small, that teach the same painful lesson over and over. People aren't safe. And this lesson usually begins early. People who struggle to trust as adults were often children who had to grow up too fast. Children who learned that relying on others was risky. Maybe their caregivers were inconsistent, loving one moment, distant the next. Maybe promises were broken casually, as if the child's feelings didn't matter. Maybe boundaries were crossed, or emotions dismissed, or vulnerabilities ignored. Children don't have the language to understand betrayal, so instead, they absorb it into their nervous system. A parent who forgets important commitments teaches the child that people change without warning. A parent who punishes emotional honesty teaches the child to hide their inner world. A parent who disappears, physically or emotionally, teaches the child that connection is temporary. By adulthood, these lessons aren't memories, they're patterns. People who can't trust tend to expect inconsistency, fear emotional shifts, see hidden motives. Where others see harmless behavior, prepare for abandonment even in stable relationships. Pay more attention to danger than comfort. This isn't negativity, it's survival. Their mind becomes a fortress designed to prevent repeat wounds. And once that fortress is built, even kindness feels suspicious. When someone is overly nice, they wonder, why? What do you want from me? When someone offers support, they think, how long until this stops? When someone expresses love, they fear, when will you change? Their distrust is not about hating people. It's about protecting themselves from a pain they know too well. But here's the paradox. They long for closeness just as deeply as anyone else. They just don't feel safe reaching for it. This creates a painful internal split. The heart wants intimacy, the mind demands distance, and the body stays tense, waiting for the moment everything falls apart. Relationships become complicated for them. They pull away when someone gets too close, but they feel lonely when they're too far. They crave reassurance but hate feeling dependent. They want honesty but fear what honesty might reveal. They want love, but love feels like a battlefield. Trust isn't just emotional for them. It's biological. Their brain is wired to detect threats. Their nervous system reacts before their logic catches up. A small change in tone can feel like a warning. A delayed reply can feel like abandonment. A disagreement can feel like betrayal. It's not drama, it's conditioning. People who can't trust didn't become cold, they became cautious. They didn't become distant, they became defensive. They didn't become hard, they became self-protective. People who can't trust anyone don't enter relationships casually. They enter with caution, calculations, and quiet fear, even if they never show it. On the outside, they might look calm, independent, even detached, but inside, they're constantly running emotional diagnostics. Are you safe? Are you lying? Are you about to leave? This internal tension becomes the invisible soundtrack of their relationships. They want connection, but fear what comes with it the moment someone gets too close. Their mind activates their old alarms. Closeness means vulnerability. Vulnerability means risk. Risk means pain. So they pull away just enough to feel safe again. They may become emotionally distant, change the subject. When feelings arise, withdraw during conflict, keep secrets to maintain control, act like they don't care. Even when they care deeply, it's not manipulation, it's protection. They test without realizing they're testing. Their distrust creates tiny tests, subtle, unintentional, and often misunderstood. They might share a small insecurity to see if you use it against them, same fine to see if you notice. They aren't distance themselves to see if you'll follow, hold back emotions, to see if you'll stay without guarantees. They're not playing games. They're checking safety. Consistency is everything for someone who can't trust. Your actions matter more than your words. Words feel cheap. Words can be broken. Words disappear. But consistency is proof. Every time you show up, you build one brick of trust. Every time you follow through, you quiet their fears. Every time you remain steady, you rewrite old memories. They don't trust promises. They trust patterns. They analyze everything a normal person might hear. They'll call you later and think nothing of it. Someone who fears betrayal hears it and immediately wonders, how much later? Did they sound different? Are they avoiding me? Are they losing interest? Their mind reads between the lines even when nothing is written there. Small behaviors become puzzles. Minor changes become warnings. Neutral moments become threats. This isn't insecurity. It's hypervigilance built from past wounds. They fear being too much deep down. They worry that their need for reassurance is a burden, so they hide it. They silence their fears. They pretend they're okay even when they're unraveling inside. They'd rather suffer alone than risk being abandoned for being difficult. But this suppression builds emotional pressure. They care but pretend not to. They hurt but tell no one. They fear losing someone but act like they don't need them. It's a quiet, lonely war between the heart wanting closeness and the mind rejecting it. Self-sabotage becomes a shield when a relationship starts to feel real, truly real. Their instinct might be to sabotage it, not because they don't want love, but because, if they leave first, they can't be left. If they push you away, they can't be hurt as badly. If they create distance, the pain feels predictable. They might start arguments out of fear, conclude the worst without evidence, pull away the moment things get serious, assume rejection. Before it happens to outsiders, it looks irrational. To them, it feels like survival. The truest thing about them, they trust slowly, but they love deeply. Under their armor, they're some of the most loyal, emotionally intelligent, and deeply caring people you will ever meet. They've just been taught, by life, by loss, by experience, that the world is filled with traps. At the core of a person who can't trust anyone lies a story, not always spoken, not always remembered clearly, but felt in every interaction. Distrust isn't their personality, it's their history speaking through them. Somewhere along the line, their emotional foundation cracked. Maybe someone they relied on didn't protect them. Maybe love came with conditions. Maybe honesty was a luxury they never experienced. Maybe promises were broken so often that they stopped believing in the concept entirely. Whatever the origin, the impact is the same. Their nervous system learned that closeness is risky, vulnerability is dangerous, and trust is a gamble they can't afford to lose again. Their mind constantly scans for danger, not because they're paranoid, but because vigilance kept them safe once. Silences feel threatening. Changes in tone trigger alarms. Neutral expressions become warning signs. Unanswered messages spiral into worst-case scenarios their brain generates automatically. It's not imagination. It's memory disguised as prediction. Inside, they live with contradictions they can't escape. They crave connection but fear the cost of it. They want people but expect betrayal. They dream of being understood but hide the truth of what they feel. They long for emotional safety but believe it doesn't exist. This creates a psychological tug-of-war where their heart moves forward and their mind pulls back every time. When someone shows them kindness, they question the motive. When someone says they care, they hunt for inconsistencies. When someone promises to stay, they wait for the moment that proves otherwise. They don't doubt you because of who you are. They doubt you because of what happened before you. Wounds that never fully healed. Lessons learned too early. Fears that became part of their identity. They're not cold. They're cautious. Not distant. Just protecting themselves. Not indifferent. Simply afraid of giving someone the power to hurt them again. Deep beneath their guarded exterior lives someone who feels everything intensely. Someone who remembers every disappointment. Someone who still carries emotions they weren't allowed to express. Someone who hopes people are good, but has learned to assume they're not. Someone who wants to trust, but fears the collapse that follows when trust is misplaced. Their distrust is a shield built from a lifetime of emotional logic. If I don't let anyone in, no one can destroy me. In truth, they're not trying to avoid love. They're trying to avoid losing themselves again. But despite everything, a part of them still hopes, quietly, painfully, secretly, that one day they'll meet someone patient enough, gentle enough, consistent enough to make them feel safe again. Someone who understands that trust for them is not given. It's earned slowly over time, not through grand gestures, but through stable presence. Not through words, but through reliability. Not through pressure, but through patience. And that deep inside this guarded person is someone extraordinarily loyal. Someone who, once they truly trust, loves with a depth and sincerity that few people ever experience. Behind every person who can't trust anyone, there is a version of themselves they rarely show, a version still longing for the softness they pretend they don't need. Even when they act detached, even when they say they prefer being alone, even when they insist they don't care, there is a quiet, stubborn hope inside them that refuses to die. They want to believe that not everyone is like the people who hurt them. They want to believe that loyalty exists. They want to believe that honesty is possible. They want to believe that someone could hold their heart carefully instead of carelessly. But this hope terrifies them, because hope is the first step toward disappointment. So they hide it. They bury it under sarcasm, emotional distance, overthinking, busyness, independence, anything that keeps others from getting too close. They've learned to rely on themselves so heavily that the idea of letting someone share the weight feels almost impossible. But even self-sufficiency becomes heavy eventually. And late at night, when the world is quiet and there's no one left to impress or push away, they feel the truth they avoid during the day. They feel the loneliness they pretend doesn't exist. They feel the longing they refuse to admit. They feel the exhaustion of carrying everything alone. They don't want a perfect person. They don't want grand romantic speeches. They don't want dramatic confessions. They want something much simpler: consistency, safety, presence. They want someone who doesn't disappear when things get hard. Someone who listens without judging. Someone who stays without being asked. Someone who understands that trust for them is not a door that swings open. It's a lock that requires patience to learn. And when they finally trust, truly trust, something remarkable happens. Their defenses soften. Their voice becomes warmer. Their eyes hold emotion instead of suspicion. Their presence becomes loyal in a way few people have ever seen. A person who takes years to trust will love you with a depth that can't be replicated. Because once they let you in, they never want to lose you. But they need something first, not perfection, not promises, not pressure. They need peace. Peace from unpredictability. Peace from broken promises. Peace from manipulation. Peace from emotional chaos. They need someone who makes trust feel natural instead of risky. And maybe that person will appear slowly, unexpectedly. Someone who doesn't rush them, doesn't demand vulnerability on command, doesn't get offended by their caution. Someone who treats their trust not as an entitlement, but as a fragile gift. And when that happens, the walls they built so carefully begin to crack in the best possible way. They realize that not everyone is out to hurt them. They realize that connection doesn't have to be dangerous. They realize that trust is not a weakness, it's an act of courage. People who can't trust aren't broken. They're healing. Slowly, quietly, in ways no one sees. And one day, they might look at someone and realize, almost in shock, I feel safe. And for a person who has lived most of their life expecting betrayal, that moment is nothing less than a miracle.